On everybody, we are live. There's nobody here just yet, but hey, we're good. All right. I hope everybody's doing well. Today's a full moon out there. I hope you picked out what seed you're going to start and everything you're going to get cracking. I'm going to drop some more purple indicas tonight and probably some of the, what is it, midnight, purple midnight. They're from Souvenir. It's a Kentucky heirloom, so we're going to probably pop some of those. But anyway, tonight's topic is growing before the age of internet and cell phones. Back then, I guess it was, 94, 95, 50% of Americans were online. There was like 10,000 websites for you to check out. And that was the old dial-up, those long, forever dial-up. It'd take you forever to get in there. It'd take you forever to send a message. But anyway, that's the way it all started. And before then, I mean, in some of the red states, well, pretty much everybody was red back then. I think California popped in around 96. But anyway, back then you didn't really have any references. You had High Times magazine, but most stores, at least in my state down in Florida, if you're under 18, you couldn't even get a High Times. So there wasn't a lot of information like there is today. I mean, it's the internet really changed a lot of things, not just growing. I mean, now you can order equipment everywhere, and back then, if credit cards, if you could find somebody that took your credit card, you wouldn't use them because those were red flags. But yeah, back then you couldn't go to the library and pull an index card. You couldn't find any books on it, except for what was in the back of High Times. But other than that, as far as genetics goes too, it was all bag seed. Everything, down here in Florida was pretty much Mexican brickweed. And there was a couple of course, Gainesville green that popped up probably, at least in my neck of the woods, probably 90, 91. I knew one guy back in 90 that actually was growing indoors. And he would always cut you off the green stuff, the green plant matter that was already ready. I mean, that was already wet, and you'd take it home. You'd lose half the weight when you dried it. But I tell you what, it was real good stuff. And as long as you didn't screw it up in the drying and curing process, and the price was right too, so you can't even beat that. Beats the brickweed. But anyway, back then, like I said, it was all about bag seed, and with not knowing what to use or anything, my mom used this. It was Peter's, the little blue powder that you mix in with a gallon, and it's a little scoop that came in it, which I think that's owned by Jack's today. I'm not real sure. But yeah, that's all we had. Anything that you can find at Kmart. I think there was Ortho Rosebud or Rose Formula or something like that, Bloom Formula. There really wasn't a lot of, fancy labeled, bottled places. And there wasn't a lot of actual light places if you wanted to go indoors. At least me as a kid, in 15, 16 years old, I had no clue of any of that stuff. And it even took me a while to figure out, wow, that's a male plant that's screwing up a lot of your shit. But, if you could even find a spot back then in Florida, there was a lot more woods back in the 80s than there is now, with the tourism and the housing boom and the condos going up everywhere. The space that you could find your spots, you were losing them left and right. Years later, because of all those spots, you had to move into, allegedly you had to move into county parks and state parks. And that came with, its drawbacks too, because eventually the pine beetle moved into the forest down there and just decimated the parks, and it really thinned them out. So, from the air, you can see more. And even from some of the paths, you can see more. You would usually have multiple paths going to your spot because, you don't want to wear a spot in the woods to where it's obvious somebody's going down there. So we would always mix it up and go different trails and all this stuff. And of course, we didn't have cell phones, so you didn't take any pictures. You might have had a Polaroid, and even then, taking a picture and documenting stuff back then was pretty risky, especially if your kid living at home with parents. My first seed that I ever cracked was in an aquarium at home. I had a red rat snake, and I remember popping that seed, and it just had its first little water leaves. And my mom was like, "Jimmy, what the hell is that?" And I told her, I said, "It's a science project." I was barely in school anyway, but she still bought it, at least for a couple of weeks. I told her it was a science project. I'm doing it for school, blah, blah, blah. So she let it ride. She said, "Yeah, right." I think she knew even then what the hell I was doing. But I just knew that she wouldn't go down in there and put her hand in with the snake and take it out. So it was worth a shot. And it got about, I would say, its first set of true leaves, maybe second. And she was like, "That's it. I know what it is. It's marijuana. Get the hell out of here." So what I did was I said, "All right, Mom, I'll take care of it." And she, God bless her, she took my word for it. Didn't watch me take it out, trusted that I would take it out. And of course I said I did take it out. Meanwhile, it was in my windowsill. Now that windowsill, it didn't really grow worth shit because it was a north facing window. Again, didn't know. I mean, you'd think common sense would tell you, hey, it's not getting any sunlight. But it still managed to grow, very weak. So I moved it to a local county park. And that was, like I said, in the 80s before the pine beetle hit it. So it was actually, we had decent woods out there. And I put it in a backpack and in a big gulp cup. And I got it out and I planted it under some trees in sunlight, but it's still, it was a little shaded, and I was happy. Well, my first plant, it's actually going to make it. And I would check that plant probably every other day on the way to school, because you could kind of veer off to where the park was. It was kind of on your way to school if you jumped the fence and went in through the back. Well, I think it made it out in the woods for maybe 10 days, but I came, checked it out, and it was just a little stub to the ground. And I'm assuming that it was rabbits, because there was little swamp hares that would run all through the park. So that one unfortunately didn't make it, but hey, it was my first attempt. The seed cracked. It got decent size. So, I was happy for a young little kid that had no clue what male plants were. But after that, that got the fever, and it started getting me going. So what I do was I got with another buddy of mine, which I won't name him because we're really not buddies anymore, but he come up with an idea to plant them spaced out instead of like in rows or like a whole 6 or 7 plants in this little patch. Let's just plant some here, some there, and move it around like in a zigzag pattern or a W pattern or whatever we chose. That way, if some people walking through the woods and seen it, or if the cops happen to watch us or stumble upon it, they would get some of our plants instead of all of our plants. So that was pretty successful, but at the same time, no clue on pest pressure, no clue on some of the strains that were sensitive to the salt air that surrounded the county. This is Pinellas County. It's right on the coast, allegedly now. But, so with the pest pressure, bragging, of course you got to tell your friends, and then they tell a friend, and next thing you know, people are going, hey, let's go look at some plants. And next thing you know, somebody stole your plants. So I would say probably out of maybe 4 years in the woods, maybe a 30% success rate. Still having to get that old brickweed. And that was pretty much the way you had to do it then. I mean, because, didn't have a car at the time, riding a bicycle, little heavy metal stoner dude. And I didn't really take a lot of things seriously when I was younger, but as a lot of us have experienced before, the trials and tribulations of being a kid, being young and dumb, but yet at the same time thinking you know everything. Well, anyway, so time moves on. Um, I quit messing around with plants for a couple of years. I think it was more of actually found a job and got into body work and started painting cars. Um, and then in the 90s hit, and everything was with the way the tourism and the, like I said, the building up of the area and removing all the trees and all that stuff. It was time to move indoors. And I can remember where I got my lights. They just recently went out of business, I think last year or the year before. I remember that it was a small landscaping business. It was on Starkey Road, right past Almerton. And it was just a little building, a little dirt road, and where they dump all the trees and stuff from tree trimming and all that stuff. And there was just a little shop, and I walked in, and they had some lights there. And of course, at that time, they were them huge. I think they were the 250 watt sun system lights, or I think maybe it was Hyder Farm or Sun System. Anyway, the same company, pretty much, that is still around today. And it was the built-in ballast inside with the reflective hood inside. Of course, the bulb was separate, but I didn't have a lot of reference material. So for a 250 watt light, I'm sitting, big time. I'm, going to produce a lot there. Well, those little lights did, for what little I knew at the time, I mean, they did produce some pretty good stuff just out of my closet and out of my garage. And that was moving indoors. It was probably, I don't know, 92 or 93. And so that was pretty cool. But at the same time, you had to keep it quiet, constantly worried about your electric bill. And down there, when you're dealing with heat, you want to run it. Everybody says, to save money, don't run it during peak hours. Well, the drawback of running it off peak hours is you had the FLIR technology, where they fly over your house and they see the heat signatures. And that's how they would identify a lot of the grows back then. Years later, the place, like I said, the place that bought the lights was called Simply Hydro. They eventually moved on Almerton Road near Belcher. Years later, you'd find out in the local newspaper that the cops were trolling the place and had surveillance cameras on the main drag across from the store. And they were monitoring everybody's license plate that went there. And at the time, I worked in cars. So what I would do is I would use a transportation tag and borrow one of the cars from the dealership. And I'd go there and stock up on all my stuff. And then I'd run it right back to work, because I'd do it during working hours. And I'd run it right back to work and then transfer it over to my car from there. And of course, there's the old taxi. You can get a taxi. But even then, that's another trail. But years later, they found out, the cops, what they would do is they'd follow people home, and then they would, do these long investigations, and they're busting guys with, whole 10, 11 plants. The main thing that gets growers caught, at least down in Florida when I was there, the 50 years I was there, the main thing that gets them caught down there is stealing power. I mean, loose lips, of course, but stealing power. I don't know how. It's like almost weekly, and I'm sure it's still happening. Almost weekly, there's somebody that's caught again stealing power. So the way we did it was I would run it during the nighttime, and I mean during the daytime, but you would have heat because your AC's cranking, and now you've added more heat with the lights. So the heat was a problem, and typical dialing in the environment. But all in all, I mean, it worked pretty good with what little references stuff we had. But then when that internet come out, that was like a game changer. I mean, wow, all these different genetics and things you only heard of. We had skunk, we had Christmas tree. What else that was popular back then? We had a very orange tasting. It was almost brown. It looked like Mexican weed, but it was not as dry and not as compressed. But it was a really dark weed that smelled like tangerines mixed with oranges. And I don't know what it's called. And there's this Crippy controversy and all this stuff. And to me, all that, it was just names. I mean, it seems like that orange weed come around probably every 2 years, and it'd stay around for months. And of course, everybody has their speculations and their ideas that, it was grown in an orange orchard. That's why it tastes like oranges and blah, 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 which I don't know. Maybe that was the case. I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I just know it was cheap. I liked it. And it was a heavy hitter, and it really made you sleepy. But yeah, growing today is just, it's amazing, because not only are the laws changing and it's more acceptable as far as in society and culture. Back then, it wasn't even, CBD wasn't heard of, or maybe it was, and I just, it wasn't heard of in my little circle. I mean, it wasn't about medicine back then, because it was about getting high. You're a young kid, and you wanted to have some bragging rights to have the best stuff, or just whatever. Just and being in Florida, it's like I said, it has its challenges. I mean, from the storms, once you're indoors, then you have hurricanes that blow through, and they like to cause roof damage, and then you have water coming through, and that kind of shuts an operation down real quick. And just days of losing power after hurricanes come through. But yeah, that was challenging, and definitely a learning experience. But with running them, you still had to do so much with your power bill down there. I mean, if you had a clothesline, dry your clothes outside. Go to the laundromat every now and then, do your clothes there to try to save on power. Move your AC down. If you moved your AC down, then it knocked things out of whack even more, and then you had heat buildup issues and everything else. But there was all these little things you had to do to try to offset your power consumption, because you're worried about the power company squealing on you because you're using more than your neighbors. And then you also had of course, the old don't throw anything out in the trash. So with that, to get rid of garbage, which working for a dealership, they had the big dumpsters, open dumpsters that they'd come haul off like once, twice a week. So that wasn't a problem, dumping it there and putting it, making sure that there was trash on top of that. Or using, again, fast food restaurants, garbage cans, again, county parks, garbage cans. Any way you can get rid of it besides just dumping it out in the wilderness or something. Because at least we knew better without all these, movements and environmental campaigns. And I mean, I think back then the biggest thing was save the whales. And yeah, Smokey the Bear, and the Indian crime with the trash on the side of the road. But that was a big, I think, growing up, as far as all the campaigns that I can remember and that I think were most effective, was probably the Indian crying on the side of the road looking at all the garbage. That was definitely an effective commercial. But yeah, so between getting rid of your garbage, keeping your power down, keeping your mouth shut, making sure you're in solid relationships with your buds, with your significant other, girlfriend, wife, whatever that may be, because I mean, nothing but horror stories on people growing, and then they have a falling out, and man, somebody's got to narc on somebody and squeal. That's just the price of it. And I remember I've been in management in a lot of car dealerships, body shops, detail departments, and stuff like that. So unfortunately, what goes with that is you got to fire people, and you gotta write them up and all this lovely stuff. And of course, when that comes, if you've again shown them your gear, not even growing, just that you have gear to grow, Man, I had this one guy that once I fired him, which he was doing a horrible job. He was stealing on the job. Come to work all screwed up on drugs, not weed, other stuff. But once I got rid of him, next thing you know, he's calling the cops. And oh, this guy grows weed. Meanwhile, the stuff's in my trunk. The gear is in my trunk. I'm not growing shit, you know. Um, it is just, and then drunk buddies that you've known 20 years, and you make the mistake. Hey, man, just don't tell anybody. Look at this. Next thing you know, they're drunk, running their mouth. Hey, man, break out the weed, man. You know you got it, that big old closet. I mean, and unfortunately, you got to get rid of those kind of friends, or don't grow the plant. And you know, now I'm a couple of years sober. I got 2 years sobriety as far as alcohol goes, and I tell you what, if I'd have cut those kind of friends loose a lot longer ago, you know, I could have done a lot more things. You know, like the good old saying is, you can't bring people up to your level. You can only stoop down to theirs. And that's definitely true. You know, the birds of a feather flock together. Let me see, what's the other one? One bad apple spoils the whole bunch, you know. But yeah, so you know, with the law enforcement, loose lips, and just trying to keep everything on the down low, it was really hard. And now, you know, things are a lot more accepting. I mean, even in the red states where it's medical, truthfully, if you're not stealing power, and you know, you're not being a nuisance to your neighbors, it's really I mean, yeah, it's going to cost you money in court, but it's not as bad as it used to be. I still don't recommend it. I'm not telling you to do anything illegal. I'm just telling you about past alleged experiences. I'm not definitely not advising you to do anything that'll get you in the pokey. Nobody wants to go there. But I got some little notes here. Yeah, the challenges of moving indoors, you know, once you get the outdoor stuff going and then you go to move indoors, it's a whole learning everything. You're popping breakers, you know, you got to upgrade the breakers. And how the hell do you get a electrician out and explain what you need? And then he's like, well, you know, do you own the house? Because you're upgrading it. I mean, because you need in most cases, you need a landlord's permission to even upgrade the power if you don't own it. So, you know, finding people like that to hook you up and to fix your power issues and all that was another challenge in itself, because, you know, you let your guard down and you be honest with somebody, and it can come back to bite you in the ass real quick. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah. Tell no one versus bragging. Yeah. That is a big one. Sorry for this big pause. But yeah, the challenges of not only growing, at least down in Florida, you know, where you're in the swampy marshlands there, man, just the splash and dash storms and the rains and the you know, it'll come out, it'll rain its ass off, then it goes away, then it leaves all these little droplets on your plant. Sun comes out, and it's like a magnifying glass, and it torches them. So besides that, and like I said, dealing with picky strains that can't handle the salt air, the ground in itself, if you didn't prep the soil out there, I mean, root rot and all sorts of issues happening back then. No clue on pathogens, no clues on any of that stuff. But it was a big game changer when we dug our holes near these lakes and the waterways, was we added a lot of gravel into it to, you know, so the root ball would have something and the soil would have something to sit upon. We would use terracotta pots and submerge them in the ground with the stones underneath them. And so that really changed out a lot. And now, you know, just it's come to light in the past year or so with me. What I learned is about the old terracotta pots, the type of material, the type of clay that they're paramagnetic. So, you know, yeah, the gravel and the rocks underneath the pot in the hole, in the pre-dug hole, would really, help things a lot. But maybe that had something to do with it too. I mean, some people use crushed up terracotta pots in the bottom of their containers. But that worked down there. And, like I said, the big challenge of the learning curve of once you're moving indoors, and then it's a whole new paranoia, because when you're young, you're on a freaking bicycle, you're carrying water. If you weren't close enough to a clean water source, which most of it around the marshes and canals and everything is more brackish. So you still had to bring in water. And, that's a little weird trying to explain why you're on your bicycle with things of water. So what you do is use 5-gallon buckets, put one in each steering wheel. Each the handlebars to keep it balanced, and then you carry a fishing pole. So that way it looks like you're going fishing. That was the paranoia that surrounded it, and maybe it wasn't necessary because truthfully, they just didn't stop you as much as they stop you now. And of course, long hair, it was the stereotype, you're a long-haired, headbanger. You got to have some meth or something on you. So, let's stop them. But that was very rare back then compared to what they started doing, I would say really 2000, late 90s, 2000, they started, it didn't matter what color you were. They just stop you for any reason. And, that's another subject in itself, the whole revenue generating thing. We won't go there. But, yeah. And, you didn't have all these fancy label chemicals to where you just follow the label. So it was definitely a trial and error type thing. But I remember when I first did deep water culture, we ran advanced nutrients, and, it was really my first time getting a whole line, buying a complete line, not just using samples, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But we invested in the whole entire line of advanced nutrients. And you're talking about price. That shit is through the roof. It still is. But again, if I knew then what I know now about Pretty Labels, and they got a massive marketing campaign and they do quite well with it. But it sucked me in and it worked on me. But that stuff in deep water culture, it really produced some big arm-sized colas. Really good stuff. But in the end, it just still lacked flavor. And at that time, that wasn't using Mexican bag seed and stuff like that. That was actually, I think, my first online seed purchase was Sanny's seeds. I think it was Killing Fields. We went and actually bought a lot of what they had to offer. We had Marijuana, Mad Scientist, Killing Fields, which I still like that one. What else did we get? Sugar Punch, the Chocolate Rain, which that was pretty good. But anyway, I remember that was my first online seed purchase. I think the second one was actually either Subcool or DNA. I'm not real sure, but definitely the genetics really, really helped. But now looking back on it, some of them bagged seeds, even though the weed wasn't all that great, I'm telling you, the seed itself really produced some good plants. Because really, my opinion on the brickweed, it was growing out great. It was just chopped and was never dried. It was never cured. They just chop that shit wet, throw it in bales, and start shipping it. And I remember getting, horsehair, crushed iguanas and lizards in quarter pounds, and just some of the most nastiest shit, but not too nasty because you still smoked it. But yeah, that's my opinion on the bag seed. It was all on how it was harvested and how it wasn't really dried or cured. It was just ship it, they'll buy it. And boy, did we bought a lot of that stuff back then. But yeah, the chemical lines, like I said, advanced nutrients in deep water culture, and down in Florida, if you don't have chillers in your reservoir running that, You gotta. We used. It starts to get slimy and nasty. We used actual 1 and 2 liter bottles of soda, empty soda bottles filled with. We just freeze that. So we'd dump these big old things of ice down in there, and they would keep the temps regulated for a good 4 or 5 hours. Of course, that depends. Some days are worse than others, but we use that. And I tell you, if I were to go back to using synthetic fertilizers, the cocoa psycho in cocoa, that stuff really produced some very good product. It had everything: the smell, the taste. I really like that line. It's expensive, and it's marketed as a pharmaceutical line. I'm noticing a lot more companies doing that now. Also, I don't know whether there's some big deal in it or it's just a marketing gimmick. Another terminology to use. But great results in pure cocoa, just using Psycho. And then I was watching Green Jean's channel, and he uses his own version of Jack's 321, not directly from Jack's at the time. He sourced his stuff from different vendors, and it's the same products, just cheaper. So I followed his recommendations, followed his formula as far as what the mix ratios were, and again ran that in pure cocoa. Great product there too. I would say that's probably the cheapest way to go if you're on a budget and you're going to run synthetics. We've had some other, we've had Emerald Harvest samples. We had some GH samples. What are some of the other ones? Of course, some Fox Farm samples. They're the little trio kit. Yeah, we pretty much tried everything, and we did TLO, I would say probably 7 years ago, True Living Organics. Got the book from the Rev, which you've seen me talk about a lot, and that just the soil, the taste of the final product on that just really it blew everything else away. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased on organics. I'm just saying based on my experience and what I've used, nothing really compares to it. And once you dial it in, and when you mix your soils, you got to let it age. It's not something you can use right away because you'll definitely kill your plants. It'll burn the shit out of them. But once it pHs and levels out to pH neutral, you're ready to go, and that stuff can be reused and re-amended every cycle. Of course, it depends on if you're in beds or containers. Right now, I wanted to switch over to the 4x4 beds and the 5x5, but we're trying to find different strains that'll work for our needs. My wife, she has neck and back herniations from 2 different car wrecks, and she's disabled. And with my back, is the second car wreck that she was in. It got my back and it got my neck, the vertebrae that attaches right to my the one right underneath the skull there. So that with that kind of pain, we need a heavy hitter, but at the same time, with 5 kids, 4 still at home, and 2, considered special needs. Like I said, one's high on the high functioning Asperger's spectrum, and the other one, he's, like I said, also in another video, that he's a few years out from having seizures. But we needed something that can make us function, but can also give us relief, because she has a hard time sleeping. I have a hard time sleeping. She's been sober off alcohol for 6 years on?
7, almost 7.
Almost 7 years. I think July 4th will be her 7th year. And so, passing out is not as easy as it used to be. So, yeah, that's why we grow in containers, because I'm still trying to find what'll work with us. And I try to produce, little amounts of seed off of everything we do, if I if I have at least a male that not necessarily a keeper male, but one that fits my one that we like. I mean, because with the count and with space and putting our actual medication amount at risk and running out and having to go to dispensary, that's the way we've been doing it. Just trying to, well, we stay within our plant count, but we use smaller containers. And with smaller containers, they can run out of gas a lot quicker. So, just gotta add more teas and stay on top of feeding them and stuff. But in closing, the culture. Well, there wasn't really, because you really didn't network with a lot of people. You didn't really talk to a lot of people. But the way it is today versus the way it is back then, yeah, things were harder back then because the knowledge was limited. But at the same time, you didn't have everybody's issues flooding your social media or any of that, because a lot of people, what stops them from doing things, and I've been guilty of this too, what stops them from trying something new or being innovative and going outside of the pot or the box, a lot of what stops people from doing that is just troll comments and comments that upset people. They're like, oh, that's it. Somebody said something bad, I'm not even going to try it. And I just think stuff like that really stifles creativity and it kills the next big thing. And I'm not talking next big thing as far as marketing goes and all that. I'm talking about, there could be some groundbreaking stuff that will never see the light of day because people are too worried about the opinions of others. So I think that just it's a big difference in culture today. Everybody wants a trophy. Everybody wants a pat on the back. I believe it's based more on ego than the actual knowledge sharing or the actual plan itself.
It's about the person, not the plant.
Yeah, it's about the person. It's about the person and not the plant. She's absolutely right. And yeah, I may look like a hippie and all that kind of stuff. Whatever, I don't care. You can say what it is. I'm an old headbanger, and I love listening to old heavy music. Not as much as I used to because I can't rock the head anymore, but I can bump it a little bit. But anyway, yeah, it's just, everybody talks about Cana culture and Cana fam, but they are sure quick to stab people in the back or shit on you in the comments, which I welcome that. Hey, because you know why? It gives me an idea for content. Just good, bad, it doesn't matter to me. If you give me some feedback of any kind, I can use it either to help somebody else or come up with another idea. Like I said, another topic. Because like I said, when we first started out with this, we were going to call it No Topic Tuesday and just come on here and I'd talk to no one. But hey, we actually had a topic this week. And maybe we'll go deeper down the road into little growth stories and all that. But right now, that is about it. And hopefully you come up with something or you have any ideas. Don't let negative people in the comments hold you back. Don't let the opinions of others affect what you're doing, especially if you're moving forward. But with that, I do believe that's about it. Let me double check my notes here. Yeah, I guess that's about it. All right, folks. Well, I will be here next Tuesday. I have no clue what the topic will be. Like I said, like, comment, subscribe. Go to our website at covercroporganics.com. Check out our blog there. We offer a vegan tea for those patients and caregivers that have immunity issues and cannot consume guano grown cannabis, we have a great vegan tea on there. We have bokashi that is in the process of being fermented, so that'll be up on there. We do offer early sex testing, so we can identify your males and help you with your plant count and help you be more consistent in your harvest and make every bit of your space count.
And I can do that in 7 days, right?
Yeah, and 7 to 10 days from germination. And what else do we got on there? Was that about it? I think. Oh, we got some pre-made veg and flower spikes also, which you can see the transplant video. You see how we use those. It's really not rocket science. There's nothing new, It's just it's the Rev uses it in the TLO book, and I like it. I just it just works for us. I've tried, other soil mixes. And some blends we still make for other people, like the Coots mix. That's a good mix. You get super heavy stalk. I mean, super thick stalks and good growth. But I just had a problem with it. I just had issues. I don't know if it was, if it was with my watering. From going from working with living soil and then going to the Coots mix, which is, it's also a living soil. I mean, that's another terminology thing that gets thrown around everywhere too. But with that, it's another learning curve. And like the saying goes, if it's not fixed, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So I've gone back to that, and we've stayed with that, and we like it. But yeah, there's a video on that. And there's a little compost video on how we make our compost and how we feed that compost to our worms and all that stuff. And as far as the spikes go, as long as you're putting those in at transplant ahead of time before you don't want to set your roots directly into it. You want them to grow gradually into it and take up what they need as it as they're moving through. So anyway, that's it. I really appreciate your time. And like I said, subscribe, leave a comment, yay, nay, give me some ideas. And if you have any questions, you can either leave them here and I can address them at the next broadcast, or you can send them to our email at covercroporganics@gmail.com. And I can answer them there. If you have an emergency question, you need something handled, just make sure you give me the details, pH, what your RH, leaf surface temps, all that stuff. Because I'm just going to ask you, I mean, if you're having issues, I mean, those are the main things you check first. I mean, everybody can say it to the blue in the face, but nobody's going to be able to answer your stuff with just a picture, and you kind of need details. So anyway, I hope you all have a good evening. It's a full moon out there. Don't let your emotions get the best of you. And if you find somebody getting on your nerves, just count to 10. Just slow down. All right. Have a good one, folks. Now, how do you turn this shit off? What?